What's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. As you can probably tell, it's a different host than usual, and that's because it is yours truly. It's Ty. I'm hosting tonight, and I'm only hosting just because I'm going solo tonight. So, it's a little disappointing to be going solo. I wish I had my buddies Cam and Lucas going with me tonight, but hey, sometimes life just happens. It happens. So, like I said, I'm running solo tonight, and man, we've got quite an episode. I mean, it's your typical Thursday episode. We're previewing all the games up for this week. We are talking buy lows and sell highs. We're going through news and notes. Before we get into any of that, though, let me just share with all of you where you can find us all. You can find us here on YouTube, and if you are watching on YouTube and you're not subscribed, why not subscribe? We're bringing you fantasy football content all year long, 3 episodes. We recap the week, we preview a week, and then we do a nice little start 'em sit 'em episode. So go ahead, drop us a follow, and subscribe on YouTube, but a follow also on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and you can find us on Instagram, and our handle is the FF Fellas. On Twitter, it is FF Fellas, and on TikTok, the good old TikTok, Fantasy Football Fellas. And if you want to join a community of diehard fantasy football people, you can join us over on Chalkboard. Chalkboard is a great place. It is exactly like Discord, but it is just sports. So there are plenty of channels there where we post waiver wire ads, we post our weekly rankings, we post, player props. Like we post a ton in there, and it's a great way for you to get involved in the fantasy football community, engage with other people. If you're looking for trade advice, that's over there. If you're looking for start sit ideas, that's over there as well. So like I said, go check out our Chalkboard page. Go check out all of our social media pages. But yeah, I guess with that, let's just get into it. Let's start with news and notes before getting into buy low, sell highs, because I want to give buy low, sell high. I want to give it some due diligence. So we'll start with news and notes, and news and notes is now being powered by our friends over at Sleeper. It's the number one fantasy platform in the world with over 4 million users. If you want to be a part of that, check out the link in the description of the video. We can't sing enough praises of Sleeper. We run all of our leagues on it. Awesome. Sleeper is a great time. So, with that, yeah, let's get into news and notes. And there's quite a bit of news. It's been kind of collected over the past couple of days, and because I've heard a lot of people say like Wednesdays are typically slower days, Tuesdays are slower days. You wouldn't think that with what notes and news we have. So first, let's start off. Brian Robinson, running back for Washington Commanders, he is back in practice. I'm not sure his status on the NFI list, but I'm pretty sure they've activated his window. He's got 21 days, so he may be a while from game time, but just to see him back in practice is very, very cool. Cool, and I mean, it's actually really, really, awesome. The man got shot, and now he's back in practice, so good on Brian Robinson. Russell Wilson and Melvin Gordon were removed from the injury report. They should be good to go for Thursday's game, and by the time that you're hearing this, they will be ready to go for tonight's game. Here's some other Denver Broncos news. They signed Latavius Murray, so now there's a little 3-headed backfield with Melvin Gordon and Mike Boone, and now Latavius Murray. Murray is probably not going to play, and if he does, it's not going to be a whole lot just because it's a brand new offense and stuff. But that being said, who knows? Who knows what this backfield is going to be like? Melvin Gordon has had fumbling issues. Mike Boone is a receiving guy. Latavius Murray, he looked good against the Vikings. So I wouldn't say it's a complete lock that this is Melvin Gordon's backfield. It sounds like they're all going to get used and utilized in some way. So That'll be something to look for in tonight's game and going forward. Let's pivot over to the Detroit Lions. We all know that the Detroit Lions had some key playmakers out for their game last week against Seattle. And this news doesn't really calm any nerves. DJ Chark, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Deandre Swift, and Josh Reynolds all didn't practice on Wednesday. I think the only player that this is really concerning about is Amon-Ra St. Brown, because it was actually kind of a surprise that he was out last game. So hopefully all of this is just precautionary. They're just taking their time. But if I'm completely honest, I'm expecting the 3 wideouts to be active and ready to go for Sunday. I'm preparing for Swift to miss another game. Now let's go down to New Orleans. Alvin Kamara back and practicing. Very, very good news. Michael Thomas is still not practicing, so that'll be something to monitor. It feels like you're always monitoring something with Michael Thomas, but that's just the world that we live in. So Keenan Allen and David Montgomery, they did not practice in their respective practices. Kind of expected that from Montgomery. Keenan Allen. Wow. Okay. So when is he coming back? No, and I think the scariest thing about Keenan Allen is that the team doesn't even know. Like they are literally taking it week to week. And I mean, that's great for Austin Eckler, who finally saw pay dirt against Houston. Mike Williams, Josh Palmer. It's solid news for those guys in terms of fantasy outlook. But if you have Keenan Allen, I would be asking questions like, how does no one know what's going on here? So Kyle Pitts, he missed practice yesterday. Again, when you're hearing this, he missed Wednesday's practice with a hamstring. And you should check out Lucas's video on TikTok about Kyle Pitts, because there is not a whole lot to be excited for with Kyle Pitts. That's just kind of how the offense is rolling at the moment. Rashad Bateman is hopeful to play this week. He's got a little bit of a foot injury, something to monitor. Because if he's down, it's then the Mark Andrews, Lamar Jackson show. I mean, it always has been, but it's interesting though. Bateman has not really been producing as a lot of people had predicted and projected him to. So if you have Rashad Bateman, be paying attention to that injury, because if he doesn't play, then it just continues this bad streak that he's been on in terms of fantasy production. So Cole Beasley, he has officially retired from the NFL. He came back for a game or two and he said, nah, I thought I was still ready to go. And he found out very quickly, apparently, that he's just ready to be done. So Cole Beasley's done off the Buccaneers roster. Gabe Davis is full participant. There's the words. Words can be hard sometimes. He's a full participant in Buffalo. He'll be back this week. Jonathan Taylor is out. And we will talk about that a little bit more in our little preview for this. But man, Indy is hurting without Jonathan Taylor. Rashad Penny misses practice with a shoulder injury. Something to watch. I wouldn't be surprised if he's still good to go on Sunday, because that's just kind of like what a Pete Carroll team is. They just don't really have – they don't miss games. Maybe that's the way to put it. And here's probably one of the more – is not so much news – but more so of a note. Sean McVay was asked about Allen Robinson in his press conference with the media, and he said a lot of the misfortune, and I'm paraphrasing here, but a lot of the misfortune with Allen Robinson this year is really out of Robinson's control, and it's specifically about different coverages that defenses are playing against the Rams, which I thought was pretty interesting, because on one hand, sure, I can see how that would be a little confusing and hard to play against. If you're preparing all week for a defense to play a certain way and they don't play that, I can see how that'd be kind of difficult. But at the same time, you are Sean McVay. You are one of the geniuses of the league. You have an all-time offense with Matt Stafford and Allen Robinson, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee, Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers too in the backfield. Like, there's a way to work around that. So I don't know if you can start him this week. I would maybe see just how they got to adjust somehow. And it seems like they are that adjustment for Robinson to get more involved in the offense seems like it's a little bit lower on the pecking order in the priority list than maybe some of the other issues on that team. So be on the lookout for Allen Robinson, though. Potential buy low. Who knows? If he kind of produces decently, who knows? So again, that was our news and notes powered by our friends over at Sleeper. Again, the number one fantasy platform in the world with over 4 million users. If you want to join and check out Sleeper, check it out with the link in our bio, in the bio of this video. Again, we can't sing enough praises of Sleeper. We have all of our leagues over there. It is such a blast using Sleeper. So, with that, let's move on to our buy low, sell highs. And when I say our, it's really mine. But I wanted to give this due diligence because there's some clarification needed with most of these players, but also like the definition of what a buy low and what a sell high is. Because people seem to be very, very confused by it. So let's go into our buy lows. And again, when I say our, it's more so mine. I've got 4 players for each. 4 players that you could potentially target to buy low on, and 4 players to potentially target, or not to target, to sell high on if you have those players. So first buy low I've got is Ramandre Stevenson. Ramandre Stevenson is currently the RB27, and I'm pretty sure his points per game is right around that range too. But really the only reason that I've got to buy low on Ramandre Stevenson is because he is the running back 27, but he's outsnapped Damian Harris the past 3 weeks. And while Damian Harris has gotten some touchdown help in those weeks, the snaps speak more volume to me. They are giving Stevenson opportunity, and Stevenson has been the pass catcher out of that backfield as well. So if that doesn't explain it enough, he has got one of the most favorable schedules for the remainder of the year. 9 of the next 13 games for the Patriots, they are playing teams that are in the top half of most fantasy points allowed to running backs. And here, I'll clarify that because that was such a jumbled sentence. They play Detroit, who has allowed the second most fantasy points to running backs. They play Cleveland, who has allowed the 12th most. Chicago, the 9th. The Jets, the 15th, and they play them twice. Indy, the 14th most. Minnesota, the 13th most. Arizona, the 10th most. And Vegas, the 6th most. That is a fantastic schedule for any running back. So, I mean, if you can't buy low on Ramandre Stevenson, I may even argue go buy low on Damian Harris, who can be a nice little RB3 piece. And especially as now we're getting into bye weeks and stuff, Damian Harris could be a great spot starter. Ramandre Stevenson could be a great spot starter. I wouldn't be surprised if one of those guys can kind of end up in a flex territory just on the schedule that they have. And again, they play for the Patriots. You know what they want to do on offense. They want to run the ball, play action. To me, it's a no-brainer. And especially when Damian Harris he's at running back 18, I believe. He's a little bit higher than Stevenson. I put Stevenson down as a buy low. He's outsnapping his counterpart. And again, the schedule is really, really nice. Next guy I got is Deandre Swift. And Swift likely has the heftiest price tag out of these 4 buy low guys. But the idea of buying low on Deandre Swift really revolves around him and his status for this coming Sunday. If he misses this coming Sunday, he then is not playing in your lineup for 3, or in that lineup, wherever he may be, for 3 weeks. Because he missed last week. He would miss this week. They have a bye next week. So that's 3 games. And if let's say the person that does have DeAndre Swift is someone that is looking to just trade for points because they realize, like, okay, I've won games, but I'm not scoring a whole lot of points, go get DeAndre Swift off of them. Or if someone is commanding a big name in return, if you've got Najee Harris, I would flip Najee Harris for DeAndre Swift in a heartbeat. Swift is currently the running back 7 in fantasy points per game. And I feel like that Swift is one of those names where it's so recognizable that it doesn't really matter what the role is. He's someone that you want on your team. And he will get receiving work. He will find pay dirt in the rushing game every now and then too. But this offense for Detroit is the highest scoring offense in the league through 4 weeks. That note should be enticing to go get a DeAndre Swift. Because I doubt they will continue to be the most productive offense in the NFL. But I really, really doubt they drastically drop. Because the emphasis on this, or for this Lions team, is the offense. Go get DeAndre Swift. It's going to be a little bit harder to trade for him if he does play this week, but I don't really see that happening, especially because of the bye week. So if he does miss, go get your hands on DeAndre Swift if you can. All right, halfway through. Third guy I've got is a favorite of Cam's. We did mention him in our previous episode as well. J.K. Dobbins. This is probably maybe a week early because I'm not expecting a repeat of what we saw against Buffalo, where he scored 2 touchdowns, 1 on the ground and 1 receiving. I'm not expecting the receiving work to really repeat, and that's what I mean when I'm saying I don't expect another repeat again, of what we saw. That being said, though, if you've got a guy like CEH or Khalil Herbert, I'm packaging those guys to go get a guy like J.K. Dobbins, who has he was a goal line threat 2 years ago now because he missed all last year. He's a goal line threat. Receiving stats from last week, even though I don't think there's like the level that he was at, I don't think that's sustainable. But the fact that he was getting receiving work is encouraging. So even if it's 2 receptions a game, that's 2 extra points in PPR plus the yards that you probably don't expect from a guy like J.K. Dobbins. So that kind of added extra pointage is what makes J.K. Dobbins super intriguing to me, at least, but I also think for Cam and Lucas as well. Yes, there may be opportunities where he loses rushing attempts just because there is Lamar Jackson. But it seems like this offense has been waiting so patiently for J.K. Dobbins to come back. Because really this offense is we run it with Lamar, or we're throwing it to Mark Andrews or Rashad Bateman or Devin Duvernay if they're open. That's kind of been their offense. Adding Dobbins as just another element that this team is just in desperate need of. So if you're able to go get J.K. Dobbins, and again, like I said, if you've got a guy like CEH or Khalil Herbert, I'm packaging them up and shipping them for J.K. Dobbins. Last guy I got is Dalvin Cook, and he has been mentioned plenty on our podcast, on our videos, and specifically around the buy low topic. when a guy like Dalvin Cook is getting, on average, 15 to 16 carries a game, and he's 8th amongst all running backs in total rushing attempts, you have to ask, why is he only the running back 25 in fantasy football? And you look at the team and you start to ask questions like, is the offensive line? Are they just not blocking well enough for Dalvin Cook? And I think a lot of people would say that's not really the case, that actually the offensive line has been actually really good for Minnesota so far this year. And PFF ranks the Vikings offensive line. They rank them 7th in run blocking, like based on their grading. So the Vikings O-line ranks 7th in run blocking according to PFF. So to me, that kind of rules out the offensive line. So it leaves it to then either coaching in the scheme, or it's the running back himself. In this case, it's Dalvin Cook. I mentioned this on the Monday episode, but I think coaching in the scheme does have some part to play in this. Cook has traditionally ran behind a fullback during his time in Minnesota. And CJ Ham has been that fullback, but he's not seeing the field as much with the new coaching staff. So that leaves Cook as the single back in a majority of their sets. And that is hard to adjust to after you're so used to running behind a fullback all the time. And, to be completely honest, he's had really solid stat lines that you'd hope for in an early round running back. He's had 2 games with almost 100 yards rushing, and they're like in the 90s, right? He's gotten 17 or more carries in 3 of the 4 games this year, and he's gotten decent receiving work too. So if it's not the offensive line, coaching and schemes can be kind of, played out, you know what I'm saying, where over time a player gets more and more comfortable and more familiar with the scheme and the coaches and stuff, and they, that's when they kind of take off and take another step forward in terms of production. And again, like you look at the current stat lines that he has, like, what is the issue? What is causing Dalvin Cook to finish only as the running back 25 overall so far? It's touchdowns. Cook only has 1 touchdown this year, and it came in the game against the Lions, where he had 0 receiving work because he did get injured in the game, but they were playing from behind the entire game. And you would think like, well, Dalvin Cook can, he's a receiving threat, so like he should be more involved. True. Minnesota came out and said that they were not expecting Detroit to double Justin Jefferson the entire game. So to me, that sounds like coaching and players trying to adjust on the go, and because they were adjusting, someone had to kind of be the sacrificial lamb in terms of production and being involved in the game. And it looks like it was Dalvin, just because he had no receiving stats at the end of that game. So all this to say, Dalvin Cook, just like every other player in this Vikings offense, is adjusting to the new scheme that Kevin O'Connell has brought to Minnesota. When they are fully adjusted, fully comfortable, Dalvin Cook will reward fantasy owners by the dip. Okay? Because when he starts scoring, he will prove his worth of being a first round running back. I was wondering if he was maybe if people had him fall into the second, and if he did, I question your league a little bit. I mean that in the nicest way possible. So, all right. So that was all in my buy low, guys. Again, to recap: Ramandre Stevenson, Deandre Swift, J.K. Dobbins, Dalvin Cook. They're all running backs. Because running backs have been the one bizarre surprise so far this year. Now, let's go over the sell high guys. These shouldn't take as long because to me, they seem pretty straightforward. First, let's start with the guy that we've talked about, ad nauseum about when it comes to selling high. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Okay, this is the performance to capitalize on. Okay, he almost had 20 carries, almost 100 yards rushing against Tampa Bay. Season highs in all of those. Season highs. Another way of explaining that, let's kind of dumb it down a little bit. He hasn't done that at all year. Unlike the games where he has 2 receiving touchdowns, that was in week 1 against Arizona, or a game with a rushing touchdown and 0 rushing yards, that was against Indianapolis, or a game where he breaks off a big run on the final play of the game to save his week, that was against the Chargers. This was I'm not going to sit here and say it was a one-of-a-kind game, but I'm not expecting 19 carries from CEH when they get Jerick McKinnon and Isaiah Pacheco as involved as they do. Okay, I think the one thing too, Kansas City dominated that game. They dominated time of possession. They put up a wicked amount of points. I don't expect that every single week. Capitalize on this performance because, again, I highly doubt we'll see another workload like this for CEH. And I guess before I continue, I need to clarify what exactly a sell high is, because a lot of people, want, when they sell high on the guy, they want them to stop producing immediately after they trade them. That's not what a sell high guy is. Someone that you're selling high is someone that you're trying to capitalize on value for after a huge week. Odds are that player will still produce. Okay? They will still continue to put up decent numbers, but you're selling them because they shouldn't put up the numbers we just saw. CEH, I'm trying to remember where CEH finished on the week. It was definitely top 15. It was definitely top 10. But the volume that he got, the workload that he got in that game is not likely to continue. Do I expect him to continue to put up 10, 11 points a week? Yes, I do. But I'm not expecting him to produce, gosh, what was it? It was, 20, was it even 30 points maybe? As I'm stalling so I can check and confirm, because seriously, the workload resulted in 22 fantasy points. I'm not expecting 20 plus from Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Capitalize on the performance. Sell him high now, because the volatility and the difference in workload is not consistent. The volatility should force you to sell. Another guy is a guy that we've talked about on the podcast before, someone that we just don't really we did not buy into at all. That's Miles Sanders. The thing that I said about CEH can also be said about Miles Sanders, where the performance and the workload is not likely to continue. Miles Sanders had 27 carries, 134 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Before I even dive into that, I'll admit, he's been efficient this year. He has. But we'll be seeing him. But from here on out, I'm expecting to see mid-teen carries at 13, 14, 15, 16 range. And the goal line work, it won't be the same. His goal line work is so volatile because of guys like Jalen Hurts and Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott. And that's the coaching. So, capitalize on the performance again, because they pretty much played in a monsoon themselves against Jacksonville. Jalen Hurts has looked like an MVP candidate this year. They sling the ball around the field. I don't know how Miles Sanders backs up this performance. Sell him high. Third guy I've got on this list, Josh Jacobs. This Vegas team is so confusing. But you know who's even more confusing? Josh Jacobs. Josh flippin' Jacobs. He had almost 30 carries for almost 150 yards. It was like 29 carries, 144 yards, 28 carries, something like that. But he had 2 touchdowns, plus 5 receptions for 30 yards. Running back 1, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe running back 2. The game of the season so far for him. Here's why you need to sell high on it, though. Here's why you need to sell high. The offense had nearly 10 more minutes of possession and 30 more offensive plays compared to Denver. And this was just a first for the year. He had gotten 19 carries in one game, but he had no receiving work. He got receiving work in another game, but he only had like 11 or 12 carries. This was the first time where it all kind of came together for him, and it just so happened that they just kind of dominated the Broncos. Here's the other thing. With this kind of like, gradual kind of showcase of Josh Jacobs, Davante Adams has been a no-show. I shouldn't say no-show, but no-show in the sense of he's a guy that had been averaging in years past 22, 23, 24 points a game, and now he's just nowhere to be found. And it almost seems like when Adams has a down game, not just fantasy-wise, but in like the actual game, is when we see more touches go to Josh Jacobs. I'm not concluding that there's a correlation there, and I'm more so just recklessly speculating. But that's why I'm selling. If I have Josh Jacobs, I'm selling high. Because I'm not expecting 30 points from Josh Jacobs when you've got a Davante Adams, when you've got a Darren Waller, when you've got a Hunter Renfrow. That kind of performance, if it happens once. I'm fine selling high on Josh Jacobs. And ideally, if you can package Jacobs up for a DeAndre Swift or a Dalvin Cook, do it. Absolutely do it. Last sell high guy is not a running back. It's actually a wide receiver. It's Deontay Johnson. Okay, and I know a lot of people are going to go like, what? No way. Yes. Deontay Johnson continues to be a target hog in this Pittsburgh offense. He's 12th among all wide receivers in targets. He's 12th. And Deontay may be one of the riskiest sell highs because of the targets that he gets. He has 0 touchdowns at the moment, so it's not too unreasonable to expect a handful of touchdowns to come eventually. But the issue is Kenny Pickett. Okay. And I know a lot of people, and especially Pittsburgh people, like to think of Kenny Pickett as the guy that'll bring him back to relevancy. That's kind of strong, but you know what I mean. I just don't see it. In his little showcase against the Jets, he threw 3 interceptions. He ran the ball 6 times in just one half for 2 touchdowns. Yeah, and the 2 touchdowns looks really, really nice. But there's 4 other rushes. He's a rookie quarterback. And here's the difference between, I'm not going to sit here and say that Kenny Pickett is a rushing quarterback, but here's the difference between a Trey Lance and a Kenny Pickett. Trey Lance has obvious rushing upside. Kenny Pickett does not have that same level. I don't have that same level of confidence in Kenny Pickett to back up a rushing game. And I think it's more so when you see him rushing the ball, it's more so because he's just trying to make something happen. When he should be checking to Najee or dropping it short to whoever is there, he's either going to try to force the ball downfield or he's just going to tuck in and go, because that's what a rookie quarterback does. They try to force the ball in when they shouldn't. That's when it gets picked. That's why he's got 3 interceptions. Or he just tucks in and goes. If that happens, Deontay Johnson suffers from that because he's not getting any targets then. And if you're not getting touchdowns and you're already at 0 touchdowns, it's tough. It's really, really tough. So sell him on the name and you got to sell it on the opportunity of, oh, it's Kenny Pickett, right? You got to kind of like false advertise your way into selling it, right? Oh, it's Kenny Pickett. He's getting an upgrade over Mitch Trubisky. You got to kind of trick someone into it. But here are the next 5 to 7 games. Or let's see. What have I got in my notes? 6 games? Because I've got a bye week in there. Maybe, I think. I don't remember. But here are the next like stretch of games for Pittsburgh. They are at Buffalo, Tampa, Miami, at Miami, Philly, at Philly, New Orleans, and Cincinnati. I don't like any of those matchups for Kenny Pickett, and I think the receivers are going to suffer from it. I totally get if you hang on to Deontay Johnson. I don't blame you one bit. But personally for me, if I had Deontay Johnson, I'm looking to sell. All right. That was the sell high guys that I thought of. Deontay Johnson, Clyde Edwards-Elaire, Miles Sanders, and Josh Jacobs. So, all right. We now get to go through our preview for all of the games. And we are going to fly because I spent a lot of time on buy low and sell highs. But it was needed. So let's start off with the Thursday game. Colts, Broncos. Broncos favored by 3 at home. Jonathan Taylor's out. And I don't blame you if you think it's Nyheim Hines time. But Frank Reich has made it sound like Phillip Lindsay, Deion Jackson are also going to get some work. Hines has only had over 10 carries. Like the only time he's had more than 10 carries in a game has only been 4 times. That's tough. The other guy to look at is Michael Pittman. Pittman's the only other option really in this offense. He will draw Pat Surtain. Pat Surtain just held Devontae Adams to 41 yards on routes. And he's been shutting down wide receivers all year. So I'm not super excited about Pittman. Both teams are top 10 against the pass, and the Colts are top 5 against the run in terms of yardage. All that to say, I think it's a pretty low-scoring game, and it's going to be a pretty ugly one. So, final score prediction that I've got Denver 17, Indianapolis 10. On to the Sunday game, starting off bright and early again with another London game. It's the Packers taking on the Giants. Packers are favored by 8 in this game. So Vegas definitely does not buy into the 3-1 record of the Giants, and I don't think a lot of other people do either, except if you're in New York. Then, sorry, welcome to reality. Packers have given up the 3rd least amount of passing yards this season. The Giants are also top 10 in that. But the Giants are the 5th worst against the run, and both teams are giving up 5 yards per carry. So there's a glimmer of hope there for Saquon, but this is a really, really good matchup for A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. Daniel Jones, it sounds like he's going to play on Sunday. He's back at practice. But he still doesn't have any weapons on the outside. And Allen Lazard and Romeo Doubs are both sharing a 20% target share in this offense. I think this is pretty straightforward. Green Bay easy in this one. I think this is a 31-17 final. So Chargers in the Clevelands to kick off the noon slate of games because this is Central Time. Cleveland is 3-point dogs at home. That's important. Herbert is averaging 27 attempts and over 300 passing yards with roughly 2 to 3 passing touchdowns a game. Browns are only giving up 212 passing yards, though, so this is a kind of a clash of the Titans, you could say. A defense that has been relatively stout against passing game and a team that kind of thrives on the passing game. The Chargers just gave up 35 points, fantasy points to Texans running back, so watch for Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt in this game. And speaking of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, they're still splitting red zone touches. And Chubb is only besting Kareem Hunt by 2 in that. So, look, Nick Chubb is Nick Chubb. He will get goal line stuff, but don't be surprised if Kareem Hunt does as well. Keenan Allen could return, but again, you got to pay attention to his hamstring and his status throughout practice this week. In terms of predicting this game, I go Cleveland, honestly. Chargers are just so banged up. Herbert gives them a shot. But this is the same team that almost blew a 27-7 lead to the Texans. So give me Cleveland in the upset. Cleveland 27, Chargers 21. Chicago at Minnesota. Minnesota favored by 7 in this game. I don't think it's unreasonable to expect a Dalvin Cook breakout game. Chicago is giving up 183 rushing yards per game. That's really nice. And I think a lot of people will look at this and say, well, their passing defense is good. Well, yeah, sure. They're only giving up 165 passing yards a game, but that's because no one throws against them. They just run against them. Minnesota has given up 7 rushing touchdowns so far this year. So Khalil Herbert, if you got Herbert, I would fire up Herbert. But I think at the end of this game, the scoreline, this game will be pretty one-sided, but the scoreline won't show that it was necessarily one-sided. Give me Minnesota 28-17 over the Bears. Detroit at New England, and New England is favored by 3 in this game. And I briefly mentioned it when talking about Deandre Swift, but Detroit has the number 1 ranked offense right now. They are dead last in defense. And they've given up 10 rushing touchdowns this season. If you've got any New England player, fire them up. New England is a bottom 5 team against the run. They are allowing the 5th fewest yards in the run game, 10th fewest. Oh, wait a sec. I'm sorry. I misspoke. The Patriots secondary has been relatively leaky. The run game has been pretty strong. This is going to be a big... Oh, no, I'm misreading my notes again. Hear me out. Here's what I have to say. Expect a big Jamal Williams game if Deandre Swift can't go. That's what I'm saying. So what I'm saying is New England is not very good against the run. They are very good against the pass. That's what I'm trying to say. Sorry, prep was non-existent today. All right. If Mac Jones plays, I think New England wins this pretty handily. He was limited in practice. Also something to keep an eye on. But if Zappy or Hoyer play, man, it gets really, really tough. I'm gonna say Mac Jones plays and give me New England 24-13 against the Lions. Atlanta going to Tampa Bay. Atlanta is 8.5-point dogs in this. And I can't really blame Vegas for putting those odds out. Drake London has outsnapped and out-targeted Kyle Pitts over the past 2 games. And again, if you haven't seen Lucas' video on Kyle Pitts over on TikTok, I highly recommend it. You could probably also find it over on our YouTube channel, Fantasy Football Fellas. We make our shorts over there. You can probably check that over there. But yeah, it is time to cut your losses with Kyle Pitts. And when I say cut, I don't actually mean cut, but like you got to find a way to like ship him out. Since Brady has been in Tampa, he's lost by 10 points 3 times in wins following excuse me. Brady's really good after a loss. He is really good. So fire up Brady. Godwin and Evans both saw 10-plus targets in the last game. Fire them up. Tampa's allowing the 5th lowest amount of points, and now you're going up against Atlanta.
I'm not really starting anyone but Drake London in this game. No Algier, no Huntley either. This is just not a good matchup for Atlanta. Give me Tampa 34-23 over the Falcons. Dolphins at the Jets, and the Jets are 3-point dogs at home. Where do we start? Miami. It sounds like Teddy will be starting. Tyreek was the biggest benefactor of having Teddy under center. That may have been just because it was Cincinnati, but Waddle also wasn't 100%. So you're starting both just because you know what that offense, those two guys will produce the offense for Miami. Miami is second to last in pass yards allowed, so it'll be a true test for Zach Wilson and what he can actually do. The backfields are interesting. Miami has kind of shifted over to Raheem Mostert, but Edmonds found pay dirt last week, so they are comfortable using both, even if they give more snaps to Mostert. Breece Hall for the Jets, he's here. He is here. He's going to get receiving work. He's going to get goal line work. He is. If you didn't buy low on Breece Hall, you missed your window. He's here. Prediction for this game, give me Miami 27, the Jets 17. I'm just looking at the rest of the games. Here we go. We'll go Tennessee at Washington. Washington 2.5-point dogs against the Titans. Tennessee really only has Derrick Henry and Robert Woods. Now that Treylon Burks is out with turf toe, it's just Derrick Henry and Robert Woods for Tennessee. That's about it. Washington and Tennessee are both bottom half defenses. That could mean this game gets just points. Terry McLaurin is being out-targeted on the season by Curtis Samuel by 10 targets. So if this is a game to break out, it's this game. There is a small chance of that happening because Jahan Dotson is expected to miss this game. All in all, what do I think of this game? This is going to be a game that I don't really want to watch because Tennessee they run with Derrick Henry. That just sets the game back at least 50 years. Then you're like, well, maybe Washington can switch it up. And then you're watching Carson Wentz, and that offense just kind of implode. So give me Tennessee 24-14 in this one. Derrick Henry should have a day again. All right, afternoon slate of games. Here we go. We got Seattle versus the Saints. New Orleans is allowing the 9th fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks, the 4th fewest to running backs, but they're allowing the 11th most to wide receivers. DK has got a tough matchup with Marshawn Lattimore. It's just a physical corner, and we know what Marshawn Lattimore does to physical corners, i.e. Mike Evans. But Tyler Lockett, you got to fire him out this week. You got to. He's made a claim to be the 1B instead of the 2. And we've talked about that before on this podcast. Being a 1B wide receiver compared to a wide receiver 2 is much more favorable for fantasy players. Seattle has been tough on wide receivers, but that's in part because of the run defense being Swiss cheese. They are allowing the 4th most fantasy points per game to running backs. And it sounds like Kamara should be back. That's going to make the difference in this game. That defense will be playing, will want to kind of get that bad taste out of their mouth after losing to the Vikings on the double doink. They're at home. I'm not expecting this one to be close. New Orleans 28, Seattle 10. Pittsburgh traveling to Buffalo. Gosh, Pittsburgh is a 14-point dog. And let me repeat, 14 points. If you're a betting person, Vegas is either they want you to take Pittsburgh That's what that line means. They want you to take the line on Pittsburgh. But if you're a betting person, take the Buffalo money line. 14 points is so much. Play safe, take the Buffalo money line. Pittsburgh's defense has allowed the 10th most passing yards to quarterbacks, 8th most rushing yards to running backs, 7th most receiving yards to wide receivers. This defense is just leaky. They just leak everywhere. Buffalo is Buffalo, and like the only thing that can be said about Buffalo is it's at home. It's at home for the second time only this year. They play 3 road games. This is the second home game that they've got. Give me Buffalo 42-21 over Pittsburgh. And I know I just said take the money line. 14 points is a lot, though, when it comes to spreads. Houston at Jacksonville. Jacksonville is favored by 7 in this game. Do you guys remember the 2021 Detroit Lions? This Jaguars team is this year's 2021 Detroit Lions because they will play you close. And I know the last game against Philly wasn't close, but that's also because they had like 5 turnovers. If those turnovers are down to like 2 or 3, there's a chance that Jacksonville actually walks out of Philadelphia with a win. Don't at me. That's just how football works. Jacksonville is allowing the 7th most fantasy points to running backs. So that's a great sign for Dameon Pierce. For Dameon Pierce. But Houston allows the most. So James Robinson, yes. And if there's a game for Travis Etienne to kind of cash in and kind of show people what he's got, this is the game. Houston can keep games close if teams aren't fully prepared. But Jacksonville is much, much better than previous Jacksonville teams in the years past. Give me Jacksonville 27-20. Another W for Jacksonville. Who would have thought? Here's something else I thought of too just now. Could Jacksonville actually win their division? The Colts have not been good. Texans are not good. Titans are meh so far. There's a chance that Jacksonville makes the playoffs this year. Just saying. Okay, San Francisco at Carolina. Carolina is 6.5 point dogs. This game is, oh gosh. I feel so bad for Carolina fans because this game is just going to be a blowout. According to PFF, this is the number 1 ranked defense in San Francisco going against the 3rd worst offense in Carolina. That's really all you need to know. San Francisco 28, Carolina 10 in this one. Probably the game of the week. Dallas going to LA to take on the Rams, and the Rams are favored by 4.5 points. I don't really know what to make of this game because the Rams offense has not really been clicking so far, and it's been kind of meh so far. And Dallas's offense, on the other hand, has been pretty solid since Cooper Rush came in. Both defenses have been playing well too. That's the other tough part about this game. But here's what: if the Rams win this game, it'll be because of the offense getting back on track. If Dallas wins this game, it's because of Cooper Rush. Because Cooper Rush needs to have a great game against a Rams defense that has really kind of shut people down. And I don't expect the rushing game to really be game-changing at all for either teams. So it's really coming down to, do I trust Cooper Rush or do I trust the Rams offense? I like the Rams offense a little bit more. So I go Rams 27, Dallas 23, but at the same time, don't be shocked if Dallas actually kind of pulls an upset here because the Rams are just not the same old Rams. Last 3 games here. Last of the afternoon slate. Philly going to Arizona. Arizona 5-point dogs. Both defenses don't really give up rushing yards. So it'll be a battle of the quarterbacks here. Jalen Hurts versus Kyler Murray, former Oklahoma quarterbacks. Because Jalen Hurts transferred to Oklahoma after Kyler Murray. Yeah. This feels like a Kyler is the MVP kind of game because he's going to single-handedly keep them in this game if it isn't a blowout. But, man, Philly has just been a different beast this year, and they're not slowing down. They are not slowing down. Philly remains undefeated here. Give me 38-21. And, like, Philly wins big. Sunday night game. We got Cincinnati traveling to Baltimore, and Cincinnati 3-point dogs. And Cincinnati got the best of Baltimore last year. They blew them out twice in both the games that they played. I know one game Cincinnati won by 20, and the other game I want to say it was more than 20. Like Cincinnati smoked Baltimore last year. This year's kind of different though between both teams because Cincinnati hasn't really looked the part yet. They're kind of getting going, but not yet. But Baltimore's defense is like the one thing that you always know Baltimore for, and their defense has just had problems. They just don't slow anyone down. And I think the difference in this game is that Cincinnati's defense is playing better than Baltimore's to a certain extent, and they can get they get a few stops. They win this game. So give me Cincinnati 34, Baltimore 24. I still think this is a high-scoring game because both games last year were just all offense. But I'm kind of shocked that Cincinnati is not the favorite here. And I know, again, it's not the same Bengals team as years past, but when you beat your divisional foe by a combined like 60 points last year, I feel like that's pretty telling. That was the Sunday night game, and now let's preview the Monday night game. Vegas traveling to Kansas City. Kansas City, 7-point favorites. This preview is probably one of the more straightforward previews. This is really good versus meh. And the really good team is at home. Prime time on Monday night. That's usually a recipe for disaster. Give me Kansas City 34, Vegas 13. So I know that was not super in-depth about players in terms of these games, but hopefully the preview kind of gave you an outlook of what to expect from the teams in these games. Again, I'll run through my picks for winners this week. Give me Denver on Thursday. Give me the Giants. Give me the Packers beating the Giants. I try to phrase it like the Giants lose one to the Packers, but no, Packers beat the Giants. Let's just keep it crystal clear. Cleveland over the Chargers. Minnesota over Chicago. New England over Detroit. Tampa Bay over Atlanta. Miami over the Jets. Tennessee over Washington. New Orleans over Seattle. Buffalo over Pittsburgh, Jacksonville over Houston, San Francisco smoking Carolina. I can't say that any better. Like Matt Rule should be gone after this game. That was just uncalled for. Anyway, Rams beating Dallas, Philly smoking Arizona, Cincinnati going to Baltimore, upsetting. Again, I use that lately because Vegas thinks that would be an upset. Cincinnati beating Baltimore, and Kansas City beating Vegas. So, that being said, that wraps up this episode where we talked about buy lows and sell highs. We had some news and notes powered by our friends over at Sleeper again. You can check out the link for Sleeper in the description of this video. And then we talked about the preview of this game, or of this week, I should say. So, again, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas. Again, you can find us on YouTube, Fantasy Football Fellas. You can find us anywhere that you get your podcasts, so Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. You can find us there. Go ahead and drop us a review. I know Spotify has added that. Go ahead and give us a review. We would love to see that. If you come over to YouTube, hit subscribe, and maybe even if you actually did enjoy the video, I know it's probably because of my face. Honestly, just like the video. That would help us out, but you do not have to. Instagram, you can find us at the THEFF Fellas. On Twitter, you can find us FF Fellas. And on TikTok, you can find us at Fantasy Football Fellas. My personal Twitter handle, if you want to ask me about any kind of start sits questions, you can find me at Tyler_Plath. You can find Lucas at Lucas Wenzel. You can find Cameron at CamLaw317. So all that to be said, best of luck on your weeks this week. We will be back on Saturday with a nice little start-sit episode. We will also go over some player prop picks. Yeah, with that being said, it's just me, Ty, on behalf of the other dudes. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on Saturday. Deuces.